Welcome to Healing Whole, the podcast. I'm your host, Callie. I'm a health and wellness expert, a certified personal trainer, and holistic health coach. I also happen to be extremely passionate about holistic healing. With over 13 years of experience, I've worked with clients from all walks of life. I also know a healing and holistic lifestyle can be a little overwhelming. I'm here to break it down for you and take you on my journey to healing whole. Remember, the materials and content within this podcast are intended as general information only and are not to be considered a substitute for medical advice or treatment. Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Healing Whole, the podcast. I'm here with Beau Ernsberger. Beau is the owner of Banyan's Island Grill. He's a father of 2 and the son of Lela Fishman, who I interviewed for episode 7, where we talked about the loved ones of addicts. As a recovering addict myself, I wanted to speak with Beau today, who is also a recovering addict, and get his point of view and his perspective on things. And I really wanted to get an idea of what his healing journey was like and how he continues along on his healing journey. So welcome, Beau. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Very good. It's really nice out here. I don't know how it is in Hawaii, but it's really nice here.
Beautiful. I'm at the beach right now. I'm looking at the ocean. It's good. Could be a lot worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question after I ask, how are you, is always, how did this healing journey start for you? So if you just want to get into it, where the healing journey started for you, what triggered the healing journey, anything that comes to mind when you think about healing and your journey.
Okay. Yeah. Like I was saying before we got on air, I always like to stay in the message and not so much the mess. So I enjoy that question. You know what I mean? I feel like that's the important part. I feel like as an addict, myself and other addicts, sometimes when we talk, we tend to stay in the mess, and sometimes it can be romanticized and, war stories and all that. And, what I know is that, if you look at the TV and look around you, there's so many different levels of this thing. And by that, I mean, you see millionaires and celebrities that go into rehab and there's, they have all the socially acceptable things and the money and all this stuff. And then you see the guy that's, under the bridge and, shooting dope and whatever. And, what I know is that although those two scenes may look different, they feel the same. You know what I mean? I've been clean for just made 5 years on the 14th of February.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So, what I know is, like I just said, that those two, it's an inside feeling. It's there's a lot of outside circumstances that can kind of help you along, but if you're anything like myself, a lot of them kind of go by the wayside and go unseen or unfelt. You know what I mean? I know, at least for me, I had a bunch of movie-esque moments that would have been nice to just drop it right there, wow, that just happened or whatever, and I just walk away and I'm clean. You know what I mean? Unfortunately and fortunately, that's not how my story is. I always like to say that my healing journey started probably about, I would say, 8 years ago. And that's when I was working for a mentor of mine. And, I was in sales. I've always been in sales. And for the first time, my addiction was brought to me, in the sales atmosphere and in that kind of, in that lane. It's pretty accepted about, using drugs and whatever. It kind of goes hand in hand. It's like a rock star lifestyle, kind of fast money. And that's pretty known. You know what I mean? For the most part, I had always been able to keep up my physical aspect. I've always been in the gym and running and just being active, right? And for the first time, that kind of started to slip. And, my mentor had kind of taken note of it. I was fully addicted to heroin at the time, using meth and other substances intravenously. And I only say that because I was also one of those people that never thought I could put a needle in my vein. You know what I mean? It's never something, that's always something that you hear in health class of the worst and whatever. And as my using progressed, I just realized that was more efficient, right? Like, I could shoot up and stay high for a lot longer with a lot less dope. And so it was literally like just like a matter of like survival and just, doing things more efficiently, I guess you would say. So, I had always been able to maintain what I like to call the smoke and mirrors. And that was making you believe that everything was good from the outside looking in. And I do whatever I want on the inside. You know what I mean? At any given time, I'd be on a cocktail of God knows what. And I'd be able to keep a straight face, talk to you, conduct my full day. Like I like to think of myself as a functioning addict. In retrospect, that was a very loose term. I don't think that my life was manageable whatsoever. It wasn't anything that I would wish upon anybody. It was very hard work keeping that whole charade up. And so, in doing that, I would always show up when I said I was going to show up for the most of the time, as far as like with this mentor, right? I wasn't the most honest person, again, in retrospect, at the time, I like to think of myself like that, because in comparing yourself, when you're in that atmosphere, it's very easy to compare yourself to other addicts. So these guys that steal and lie and all that stuff. And I didn't do these things. So I thought, you know what I mean? I did do them, but just in less glaring ways. And it wasn't as, I wouldn't go and steal from your pocket or whatever. Yeah. So I prided myself on that and thought of myself as better than that. But I was stealing. I was stealing in different ways. I was stealing people's time. I was stealing their trust. I was, and not always being honest in certain situations. If I knew I could manipulate a situation and get a little bit more money, I would. That was just second nature to me. So I missed a phone call in the morning. I'd done too much shit the night before. I passed out. And meanwhile, like, just to give you a little view on what my situation was like, this guy was providing me a living quarters. He provided me a car. He gave me a salary. I was making good money. I was living like a, excuse my language, but I was living like a fucking addict. You know what I mean? Like just paycheck to paycheck, fucking scraping everything together. But I always had nice clothes and I was driving a nice car. You know what I mean? Like that was, I had some nice sunglasses and yada, yada, yada. And that was my thing. As long as I was able to keep money in my pocket and some girls around me, I was relatively happy, and so anyway, I missed this phone call and I was too ashamed to call him back, because I'd always made that phone call. And, I knew that he knew that my shit had caught up with me. You know what I mean? Up until that point, it was kind of like, I don't give a fuck what you think. It's I'm making you money. I'm making money. I maintain my side of the deal. What I do on my own time is completely up to me. You know what I mean? It's none of your business. And, I knew when I didn't make that phone call and I didn't call him back and whatever, I knew the gig was up. So he texted me and he was just like, hey, I want you to come in tomorrow. Everything's okay. I just really want to talk to you. And when I did, there was a full intervention. Wow. And the whole company was there and he's like, hey, look, we're going to pay for you to go to rehab. While you're in rehab, you can get your salary and half of everything that's sold. So not only was I going to rehab, I was getting paid to go to rehab, wow. Which is pretty much unheard of, right? So it's recovery on a silver platter, which is not how we like it. No. So, I'd love to say, from that point on, I was clean. But that's not the case, like a selfish addict, and I keep using that term, like, I guess I'm in a more negative context. I know it in a different way now, but like, just, me being me, I thought I could scam the system, and I, brought dope in with me to treatment, and I got found out. And, I popped on a drug test, and You know, the coordinator of the rehab kind of brought me in his office, and he sat me down, and he gave me a schedule to the needle exchange, and he goes, "Here you go." And I'm like, "What's this?" And he goes, "You're not done using yet." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm done." You know what I mean? And I proceeded to argue with this man, and he's like, you know, take your stuff and get out. Like, you're still getting high. And again, feeling better than, I told him fuck you or whatever I said, and gathered up all my things, and I was out on the curb. And in losing that opportunity, I also lost my place to live, you know, my vehicle, that job, that relationship for that time being. I've since rekindled that relationship, and he's a very good friend of mine. But at the time, I knew it was, you know, I knew it was over. So when I went out on the street, I called my girlfriend at the time, who I also would casually use with, you know, but she would always be that one to try to fix me and whatever. So she picks me up, and then I get in her car, and she proceeds to tell me, you know, "Oh, my mom has a, you know, a spare studio apartment, and you can stay there, and then we're gonna get you you can get your job or whatever." And immediately, like, I was just defeated. Like, I just felt like I cannot do this anymore. Like, I cannot I don't have it in me to fake this shit anymore. Like, obviously what I want to do is I want to get high. That's what I want to fucking do. That's what I've been trying to do my whole life. Like, is just break away and run away and not deal with any of this outside shit. And, you know, I need to figure out what's going on inside, you know? As an addict, I think a very, you know, a good translation for that for me is that, like, I have this delusion that leads me to believe that something outside of myself can fix what's wrong with me inside. You know what I mean?
I love that.
And today I know that is fill in the blank, right? You know, it doesn't have to be heroin or coke or meth. It could be sex. It could be food. It could be porn. It could be, you know, money. It could be whatever. Fill in the blank, right? I'm an addict, you know, and I know that about myself. And you know, to fix what's going on inside, I have to you know, sit with myself and deal with it the correct ways. But, you know, at that time I had no tools to do that. And I just looked at her, and I told her to take me to the dope man's house. You know what I mean? I was like, take me to so-and-so's house. You're going to drop me off there, and I'm going to figure this out, you know? And that was like the big changing point in my life, you know? Like, it was the first time that I really came to grips with what I was dealing with. And a lot of people, you know, they go into recovery like that. And, you know, we'll get to that point. But, you know, at this point, I was turning my life over to the drugs, you know, because that's what I wanted to do. Like, I was like, fucking take me. We're going to figure this out. I'm either going to die or I'm going to fucking, you know, I'm going to figure it out. So that's what I did. And then for the next 3 years, I was homeless, you know. You know, and I know my mom, you know, touched on a lot of different aspects of my life up until that point. You know, and like I said, I don't like to stay in the quote unquote mess, but today I know that although that stuff may have had something to do with, you know, obviously your environment and certain things growing up, but it's like, there was no real moment that was like, oh, I'm changed or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, of course there was things that affected me throughout my life, but, you know, since I've done the work within myself, I now realize that, like, everybody around me was just doing the best they had with what they were given, right? Like, you heard some of my mom's trauma and stuff like that, and you know, that's good. I'm glad I got a little bit more insight on that as well, and that makes sense. You know what I mean? It makes total sense. You know, hurt people, and not intentionally, right? Like, my mother wasn't terrible to me. She didn't physically abuse me, whatever. But there was some things that, you know, I could have done without, you know what I mean? And some other stuff like that. But, you know, I don't point the finger today. Today, I know that, you know, I'm a man, and, you know, I have to deal with my own decisions. And so this is where I'm at. So, back to where we were, I was, for the next 3 years, I was homeless, and I would go in and out of treatment, right? I'd get beat up enough where I would be like, you know what, I'm done or whatever. I need a little, what we call an oil change, which is basically like, I'm going into treatment. to get a shower and some fucking, food.
Yeah.
I would trick myself into believing I wanted to get clean, but as soon as I would feel well enough again, I was out the door. I'd either get kicked out or I would just walk out. And there was a lot of freedom into being like that. There's a lot of freedom Hawaii is not a terrible place to be homeless, right? It's not like I'm in Cleveland where it's snowing or whatever. So,
right.
But in the same point, I was eating out of trash cans. I was using dirty needles. I was, all these grimy things. But I was able to sit with myself for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like as much as you can, being fucking high out of your mind and in psychosis and whatever. I was really able to take everything that I was trying to fake this stuff for and just throw it away. You know what I mean? I was able to be myself, which at that time was a fucking homeless using drug addict. And I had friends that would come up to me and be like, Beau, like so taken back, like they'd see me in all these nice clothes and out at clubs and all this stuff. And now I'm like literally eating out of a trash can at fucking 150 pounds. And I would just look at them like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm free. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's what I thought at the time, until I didn't, and I went to treatment 10 times in those 3 years. I'm an advocate for rehab and treatment, as a means to get yourself some days between your last time you used or drank or whatever. There's no 30 to 60 day solution for a fucking, years and years of what it took to make that, right? It's, they may give you some tools, but the reality is, that trip ends. You're not going to fucking stay in this little safe box the whole time. At some point, you got to go out in the real world and, again, deal with yourself. You know what I mean? And for me, like, I was addicted to treatment. Like, for real. Like, I would go in there and they would sit there and feed you and tell you what time you got to be at class and here you go, Beau, and like all this stuff. And it felt good, like, especially after, sleeping in the rain and all that other stuff. So,
yeah.
When I actually got this thing, which we'll fast forward to now, is, I was in treatment yet again, and I had this pass to go to a psych eval, which you go to a psych eval to get assistance from the state, get your EBT card and your financial assistance. Yep. And I was, the day before, I had made the decision that I was going to use. Like, I was like, I'm going to take this pass and I'm going to go get high, because I couldn't get this thought out of my head. Like, the last time I used, I wasn't able to shoot up, which is the way I prefer to use. And like, it was bugging me and like, whatever. So, I told we have a shadow, or like a guy that comes with you to make sure you don't do that. And I told him, I was like, hey, I'm going to go down into town and I'm going to cop and I'm going to use. And he kind of like laughed at me because he thought I was kidding. And that's exactly what I did. The bus was supposed to go this way. I took the bus going that way. And he's like, yo. And I'm like, see you later. And so, I got high. And when I went in and I caught my stuff and I did what I wanted to do, it came over me and it was like, here you are again. Like, you did it again. And when you shoot methamphetamine, it's not something that you just shake off right away. It's not like doing a line of coke in a few hours, you're going to go to sleep. Like, you signed up for a ride and you're going to take that ride, so that I was high again. I knew that I'm like, fuck, you know what I mean? I'm going to have to go back to treatment and whatever. So, I actually went and did my psych eval, which I'm sure I passed with flying colors. And, I left her office. And then I just proceeded to pace the beach, and it poured down raining that night. And I didn't go back to treatment. And I stripped down all my clothes and I sat in the ocean because it was like warmer than the air. And I got stung by a bunch of jellyfish. And, that next morning, as the sun was coming up, which is funny because I did this on Kailua Beach, which is where I'm sitting right now, and also where I live. And I'd never really been out here. I mean, obviously I have, I lived in Hawaii for a long time, but I never lived out here or spent any amount of time out here. So as the sun was coming up, I see all these people walking their dogs and running and and I just like, I'm soaking wet. I got this long hair. And for the first time, like, I was ashamed of myself. You know what I mean? And I'd never felt that like that before. You know, like I said, I'd been, you know, digging in trash cans and doing God knows what in front of all these people. And I like had like a little sense of pride about it. I was like, fuck, I'm figuring this shit out, you know? But now I was kind of like, man, what am I doing? Like, I keep running in this circle. And up until this point too, like I said, I've had all these movie-esque moments. I've had people OD and just drop dead in front of me. I've had fucking, you name it, I've seen it, or it's been done around me. And, you know, that never stopped me. It never stopped me. You know what I mean? And maybe for a day or something I would think about it, but that was it, man. And so I always liken it to like Adam and Eve, you know, discovering they were naked in the Garden of Eden. Like, I just like realized, I looked down, I'm like, what am I fucking doing? You know? And so I jumped up back on the bus. If I'm honest, I tried to amp the bus pass to get high one more time, but nobody would take it. But thank God I didn't do that. Thank God I didn't do that, because that was the only reason that they took me back into treatment, was because I didn't steal anything. So if I would have got that bus pass, I wouldn't have been back. Or wouldn't have been allowed back in. So I got back there. They kicked me out of the treatment center I was in, but attached to the treatment center is a detox. And I begged and pleaded to be let into detox, and they did, you know. And I thank God for that detox. I've taken meetings in there for over a year. I was the first guy to take meetings in there since COVID, and now, you know, one of my buddies does it. But I mean, I had been to that place 16 times on record. And, you know, for anybody that has been in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out, you know, people can change. People do change. I'm guilty of it too, where I watch guys come in and out and say they're going to get sober and then don't. And I just, you know, you kind of lose faith or lose trust. You're just kind of like, whatever. At some point you got to be like, show me. Right. So, you know, what I had when I got into the detox for this time is I had what I feel like, you know, everyone needs to really grasp this thing, is a gift of desperation. You know, it's what I needed. And by that, I mean, I was willing to do anything to get clean and stay clean. Anything. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I know my mom touched on it, and, you know, I knew what AA and NA was. My stepdad had been sobering for a long period of time. But because of that, I was very resistant to it, right? I like to be different. I want to be unique. That shit's good for you, but I'm better than that. Or, you know, hey, man, like, this stuff's pretty good, but, like, I don't really believe in that, or I think I should do that different, or whatever. That was always my case, right? I would come in and out like that. I would, you know, get 30, 60, 90 days, sometimes 6 months. And, but I wouldn't follow all the suggestions. I would maybe get a sponsor, but I wouldn't stop dating the girl, or, you know, I wouldn't stop hanging around my old friends. I would try to, like, sell drugs and not do drugs, or do drugs and not sell drugs. And, like, I was trying to put this thing together like in a Rubik's Cube, right? I tried every single possible way I could think of, other than the way it was written, other than the exact recipe, right? Yeah. So now that when I walked in there, I knew what I had to do. Like, you know, I knew it was possible. I've seen there's millions of people around the world that are sober today through the 12 steps and this program. And I knew that I don't have any ideas, and fucking the ideas that I do have, I better not listen to, because I've been trying those for a long time, and I end up back here, right? So, you know, I always say it's like raising your hand in the back of the class, you know, and saying that you don't know what's going on, right? But instead of the class, this is life, and you're 30 years old, and you just like, you're admitting like, fuck, I've been cheating this whole time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have no fucking idea what's going on. I've just been fucking getting by, you know? And that's hard to do. It's not easy to do. It takes a lot of humility, and you got to admit you don't know, you know what I mean? And I was willing to do that. I had nothing to lose. So I did. And I knew what I had to do, which was, you know, they have a meeting in there every night. And I told myself, I'm going to go to this meeting, and I'm going to get a sponsor, and I'm going to call that motherfucker every single day, and I'm going to do whatever he says. You know, I told myself that. And, like, dude, fucking Big Bird could have showed up and it would have been my sponsor. You know what I mean? It didn't matter.
Yeah.
But luckily it wasn't Big Bird. You know, it was my sponsor, Scott today, who has, at the time,
Beautiful.
he had 31 years. You know, very successful financially, but also very involved in this thing, and he lives this thing. You know, I could feel it. You know, and you know, some of the stuff kind of chokes me up when I talk about it, because it was just like doing this kind of stuff, like processing it like this. I always kind of get new perspectives of certain things that really help me, that I didn't get before, just by like openly talking about it. And so it's funny, like when they have these stickers over here in Hawaii, they say he is greater than I. And it's like a Christian thing. It means like Jesus is greater than me, or whatever the fuck, you know, I don't know. And I always had this thing in my mind that said we is greater than I, you know, and I always thought that would be a funny kind of play on that, but it's also like true, of course, you know, as far as my thought process goes. Like I was like, that would be a great business idea or a t-shirt idea or whatever. So I'm sitting, and like I'm saying that because I'm sitting in this meeting, and my sponsor walked in and he has a t-shirt on that says we is greater than I. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, that was crazy. So automatically I'm like, whoa, that's weird. And like he speaks, and you know, he's speaking freedom. You know what I mean? Like I can hear it in his voice, I can feel it. And so I walk up to him after the meeting and I get his number. And I'm like, listen, dude, like, I'm going to call you every single day. And he goes, okay. And now I know why he said okay, is because so many people come up and say that to me and they don't. You know what I mean? It's like, they'll call me for a day or two or whatever, you know, but I did, you know, and I got back into treatment. I got back into this place over here. It's called Hina Malka, and I was there for the 4th time. So, and I remember getting in there, and the guy who gave me that schedule to the needle exchange brought me, that was a treatment center I was in for the very first time that I was telling you about. And he brought me into this other room, and he goes, Beau, he goes, I don't know how you're here right now, because if your name would have crossed my desk, I would have never let you in. So the fact that you're here is a miracle. But if I hear your name at all, any time during this, he goes, you're out of here. And I was like, cool. And I just sat and shut the fuck up and just did what I was told. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a social event for me. It wasn't like this, you know, I wasn't challenging anything. I just did my work, you know, and because I knew what it was about. I knew that I need to get off the street. I knew that, you know, these guys had better ideas than me, but at the bare minimum, it was going to get me 30 to 60 days clean. You know what I mean? And get me my stuff that I needed to get to the next level, which was my financial assistance and whatever. So I went and got my financial assistance, all that stuff. And, you know, I'm calling my sponsor every single day. And, you know, the first thing he suggested to me was move to Kailua, which is where I live today. And like immediately my brain is like screaming at me, right? It's like, oh, you can't move to Kailua. You don't know anybody over there. You got to go to town. That's where you can make money. That's where you have all these connections and you could do your job. And for the first time, I didn't listen to my brain. I just said, okay, yes. And I did it. And that was the beginning of the change in my life. That alone right there, that lesson has changed my life 180 degrees. Because today, I know that I don't know everything. And today, if there's something wrong with my car, I call a mechanic. If I want advice on something, like I call a person that has been there before. And I'm able to take suggestions, apply it in my life, and get the results, which is like, you know, seems like a fucking logical thing. But for me, like that was not what was going on. You know, I might listen to you and I might whatever entertain just because I'm supposed to do that. And I know whatever, but at the end of the day, you know, I was the first and last stop. Like I was like, you know, whatever. And I would probably modify it or, you know, throw my own little twist in it and, you know, end up fucking it up most likely. But, you know, so I began doing that, and I can, you know, literally say that I've taken every suggestion that man's given to me, you know, and I know that being, you know, going into sobriety can be a scary thing for a lot of people. And, you know, a lot of people get hung up, and this is from my experience and what I've seen. And also, you know, like I said, my experience, a lot of things that would hang me up was that, like, I thought I knew better. Right. So when I'm taking a suggestion from somebody who has 30 years clean or 10 years clean or whatever, and they have success in their life, it's like, you know, you want to learn basketball, right? And it's like, you got Michael Jordan over here who's played for fucking 20 years, or you got some fucking, you know, doofus over there who's just fucking around. Why would you not take the advice from Michael Jordan, you know? And these are the people that are in these rooms that are successful. I'm not saying that everybody who has time is just this, you know, God or whatever. I mean, everybody's human. Yeah. And that's another thing that I realized too, is that, like, you know, my sponsor's human. He's not perfect. You know, there's some things that, you know, we don't see eye to eye on. But when it comes to this thing and you know, saving him, suggesting and saving my life, the suggestions that saved my life, I felt them. I knew what was right. You know what I'm saying? He's not asking me to do anything crazy, right? He's asking me to do logical things. But for me, it's uncomfortable because it's different, right? You know, I had to get honest. I had to not stay around people that I was, you know, that I was hanging out with before. You know, I had to call somebody new every day. I had to get in these uncomfortable situations. I had to do my step work, you know, and those things changed my life. You know, like today, I mean, I talk to somebody who's sober or in sobriety every single day of my life. You know what I mean? Like, that's because I've called them and now they call me, you know, and I built this safety net around me by going to meetings, by calling these people, that if I fell off the map tomorrow, I would not make it. I would not make it a fucking day before I would have somebody at my house, or somebody calling me like, yo, what's up? You good?
Yeah.
You good? And I've gotten so used to expressing my feelings and telling people what's going on inside of me. Like, I don't have shallow conversations today. I don't fucking sit here and talk about what happened on the baseball game or whatever the fuck. Like, maybe for a second, but really, like, that doesn't interest me. Like, what's going on? How's Callie doing today? Like, you know what I mean? Like what's going? And I, because it's like, that's what it takes for us to get better as a species. You know, I feel like I'm deeply passionate about, you know, this process, because it's like what I do on a regular basis. I mean, I know that everybody can benefit from. I sit around in a circle of men, sometimes men and women, but you know, I generally gravitate to all men's meetings. I just feel like I can be a little bit more honest, and you know, it's good. And same thing with women. I feel like, you know, you're going to get fed a lot more in an all woman setting. Not saying that you won't in a mixed setting, of course, but you know, for me, that's just my experience anyway. But you know, we sit around and we open up. You know, we talk about our insecurities. We talk about, you know, how we can get better as people, and what goes on in the feelings that we have, you know, and what's real and what's not real. And you quickly realize that, like, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. That's why I said, like, although the scenes may look different, like the guy shooting up under the bridge and the fucking guy in the mansion, the feeling is the same. You know, at a very base level, I'm insecure and I'm selfish. That's it. You know, and I have two fears. I'm either afraid of not getting what I want, or I'm afraid of losing what I have. And if I let those fears drive me, you know, I just operate impulsively, and I'm fucking and I'm scared. But if I trust the process, you know, a big part of you know, what we do is learning to turn my will and my life over to a power greater than myself, whatever that is to you. It can be Jesus, it could be the universe, whatever. You know, at first it was God. It was my sponsor, because I didn't know any better. I'm like, you tell me what to do, I'll do it, right? But now I know that everything's going to work out. I know everything's going to be okay. I know it. I know it. It's not I feel it. It's not I believe in it. I know it. You know, things aren't going to go the way that they're aligned in my head 90% of the time, you know, but that's probably for the better, you know. And you know, after things start happening, like, you know, I say a lot, like, things don't fall apart, they come together. Meaning, like, it may look like shit's all getting awry in my life, but I don't get scared today. I get curious. Like, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, how's this going to work out? What good is going to come out of this? You know? And dude, if you give me a long enough time, I can look back and be like, oh, that's why that happened. That's why, you know, that's why that happened, because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. And if whatever, you know what I'm saying? So it's just given me a really cool perspective. It's allowed me to open up to people, doing stuff like this with you. And you know, my mission today and my purpose is to help the next person, you know, and that's it. You know, I owe, you know what I mean? Like I owe. I should be dead by all rights, multiple times, not supposed to be here, you know? So anything after that point, it's all fucking money in the mattress. This is all extra, you know? But to stay here, I can't just be a selfish little fuck, you know, the whole time. I can't just be take. What about me? What about me? You know? So that's a constant practice. You know, that's a constant practice for me because I'm human, you know, and I still have that in me. And, you know, I still struggle with other things. I go to essay, which is sex addiction. You know, I realize that, like, you know, my relationship and my validation that I try to get through women and sex is just as bad as the dope. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, as the longer I stay clean, the more I realize that, dude, addiction touches all aspects of my life. It's not just about the drugs and the alcohol. Those are the most glaring aspects because everybody can be like, oh man, you better not do that shit. But nobody really wants to talk about the stuff that everybody uses, which is food, which is sex, which is money, which is, you know, relationships and being codependent and all that. Like, that stuff's hard. You know what I mean? It's stuff's hard to find that balance, and it's hard to you know, see how I can improve in those areas of my life. So, you know, I just, like I said, I just try to help others. Like a big part of what we do is helping somebody else, you know, because that gets me out of here. Because if I'm left up here, again, I'm just going to gravitate towards selfish things. So, you know, I have 2 children today, you know, like a business and whatever. In 5 years, I haven't made a late rent payment. I haven't missed a credit card payment.
Beautiful.
I haven't, you know what I mean? And for me, like, that's huge, you know, because it's not about like what I can just do for a day or a week. Like, what can I do for years? What can I do consistently, you know, over time and build something? You know, all we have is like what they say is all we have is today, which is 100% true. But, you know, I try to live my life by a set of morals and principles today that, you know, are unshakable. And you know, I learned how to be a man when I got sober. Like that's 100% the truth. Like I faked that shit so hard up until that point. And today I can honestly say that I'm a man. You know what I mean? I support my family. I'm honest. I'm integrous. You know, I try to operate with integrity. Obviously I'm not perfect. But I'm aware. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like to think that if you bring anything to me today, I'm like, you know what, Beau, you're a little aggressive, or you came across like this, or, you know, you're not really listening. And that I'm working on that with my partner, you know, with JoJo. We have this awesome relationship where we can be butt naked, honest with each other. Like, hey, you know, you said wonderful. This and it brought up this, you know, and I can honestly say that we've never been in like an argument in a sense of like, I just know in all my past relationships, bro, we would argue and I'd fucking walk out or whatever. And we would just be pissed and, you know, fuck you. I'm just going to go hurt myself because fuck you, whatever. And like today, we don't go to sleep angry. We don't go to sleep upset. We, you know, we talk it out. Do we need to have space sometimes? Of course, you know, but, you know, after that space, we regroup. Hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Yeah. I don't want to hurt you, you know, because I don't really believe, like, if you're in a real relationship, 9 times out of 10, your intent is not going to be malicious, right? It's like, it's not like you're intentionally trying to harm the other person, but it's like, you know, we all have our own defects and our own sore spots and places where we were hurt, and that brings up insecurities, and we act out, you know, and that it harms other people, and we need to be aware of that. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and I'm touching on all these other areas because, like, I believe all this stuff is important. I feel like, you know, like I said, as humans, it's important to come together and talk about our issues. And you know, it's like people laugh at the idea of world peace, but it's like, dude, that's like the only fucking thing we haven't tried. You know, in any other sense of the word, in any other sense, it's like, what puts out fire? Water. What puts, you know what I mean? It's always the opposite, right? But it's like, what's going to stop war? Oh, more war. Like, your dick's bigger than mine. Oh, my missile's bigger than yours. Oh, like, you know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck, you know? And it's so silly kind of sitting back, you know, and watching us as a whole, you know, and some of the things that we do. But it's all from what I'm talking about right now. It's all from insecurities. It's all from fear. It's from all that. And it just starts with us, me, and then it goes to my family, and then it goes to and it just gets bigger. So the only thing that I can do today to try to help, the world is by just being better me, you know what I'm saying? And trying to help people around me, like I can't lose my mind on things that I can't control, right? I can't control people, places, things, and outcomes, but I can control my reaction to what's going on. Anyway, I'm going to end my tangent there. And
I have questions, if you're okay with them.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
I wrote notes because I was loving everything you said. Okay, so you've gone through the 12 steps. Have you gone through the entire 12 steps?
Yes, multiple times.
Okay. And is that something that's what I was going to ask next, was it multiple times? Is that something that you're just constantly doing, right? So in my opinion, there's no such thing as like healed, in my opinion, for me. Maybe for other people, that's what they believe, and that's fine. But for me, a healing journey is constant, and growing is constant. So is that kind of like the same concept of the 12 steps? Is that you are constantly healing or growing, or what do you think about that perspective?
Yeah. Like, I don't believe that there's an end. I feel like, in my mind, I'm always searching for this, like, once I complete this, or once I get this, then I'll be good. Everything will be fine. It's not real. There are no days off. This isn't like, bro, I'll try to find a space so I can relax or just take a day off. If I sit around and fucking do nothing, chances are I'm going to do some shit that is not good for me. I'm going to watch some junk on the internet. I'm going to eat some shitty food. And, although it may be instant gratification, it's going to be long-term suffering. Right. Yeah. So yes, I believe that all I have is today, and the only thing I have today is based on my spiritual condition, right? Based on how well I am and how prepared I am spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and for that, I need to do the things, you know what I'm saying? Like I need to pray in the morning. I need to meditate. And, I know, for some people listening, this may seem religious or spiritual. Dude, it doesn't matter what you believe in. It's just more of finding peace within yourself. Like, and that's what it took for me, right? Like this morning, I woke up and did a run. For a lot of people that may seem like, oh, well, that's wild. Like for me, bro, if I don't do that shit, I feel it. Everybody else around me feels it, because it's like, I'm like a little puppy, like, and I need to wear myself out to calm my mind, And like, there's different things that I do on a daily basis. I believe morning routines are important. But yeah, I guess just to kind of answer your question, like it's a constant progression for me. Another part of the 12 steps is the 12 steps, the 12th step, which is helping others, basically, right? And when I take sponsees or other men through the steps, I'm also doing them myself, But like I said before, I'm currently doing the steps in SA, which is Sex Addicts Anonymous. I want to do the steps around food. I want to do the steps around money. You know what I mean? I feel like for me, this is like, it's been an awakening experience of like, it's like tweaking like an engine or something. It's like, oh, cool. Like I do really well after I just modified this part. What happens if I modify this part? And what happens if I modify that part? You know what I mean? So for me, it's just, it's an acceptance thing. Like I've accepted the fact that I need a disciplined structure around all these areas of my life. It's not just, I can't just sit back and be like, oh, wow, I don't drink or use drugs today. I've been through serious loss, in sobriety and stayed sober. Like I lost my uncle, who was pretty much like, another father to me. And that was tough, man. It was very unexpected, and it just kind of happened. And I didn't think about using. It's not the first thing that came to my head. You know what I mean? Like I went and I picked up a friend, and he drove around with me, and I finished my day,
Yeah.
And as I go to meetings, I see people walk through tremendous things, like crazy, losing, God forbid, losing children and all this other shit. And they're at a meeting, you know what I mean? They're talking about it. And they're being surrounded by love, One of the things too, and I know this doesn't necessarily have to do a lot with the question per se, but one of the things that I learned in recovery was unconditional love. I never felt that before. And I know my mom, in her perception gave me unconditional love, my dad, and so on and so forth. But from my view, it always felt conditional. It always felt like, oh, if I'm doing good in school, then I get this. Or if I'm doing good in here, I get this. But if I don't, then I get that. And everything was very transactional. You know what I mean? And so because of that, I felt fear, like I don't want to, say what's really going on because, that might get me in trouble, or I might be looked at like this or whatever. And here I can tell you exactly what happened. I can call my sponsor today and be like, hey man, I did this or whatever, the worst imaginable things. And we're just like, here, come on in. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, we did that shit too. How are we going to get better? You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. Like, how are we going to get better? So, yes, to answer your question, for me, it's a constant, it's an everyday thing.
Yeah. I love that you touched on that unconditional love, because I never knew unconditional love until I may have known it. Like you said, like my mom and dad, they love me. But I never really experienced, maybe it's because I wasn't unconditionally loving myself or in my own journey, but I never experienced unconditional love until after I got clean and sober. And I don't know, I experienced it when I went to AA. They just welcomed me in and they were open with me, and they just were there, and they let me cry, and they let me have feelings, and they just listened. But even with my parents now, I've noticed that I can tell them finally anything and everything. And I don't know if it's because I felt that I needed to just maybe be more honest with myself, to be honest with them, and they were going to love me through it. But I've experienced so much more unconditional love now than I ever have in my past. And I was always, like you said, over the fear thing, I was always scared people were going to leave me if I told them the truth, or they were going to leave if I didn't do what they wanted, or this or that. And another big part you said was trust, like just trusting that everything it's going to work out. It's going to be okay. Like, we have to trust that life is happening for us. And like leading with love over fear was a huge thing for me. So trust, I just wanted to touch on those things that I connected with. Trusting is a huge thing. And then love over fear was a huge thing that I experience way more now than I did in the past.
Yeah, it's scary too, right? Like walking into the room and like having people, it's fucking so uncomfortable, so scary.
Weird.
I remember when I first would go to meetings, one of the things that drove me away initially was that. Like, everybody's like asking my number. I have guys texting me the next morning, like, "Hey man, how are you doing? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Who the fuck are you? Like, why are you texting me? Like, what are you, gay or something? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's where my mind went, because I didn't know how to love. I did not know anything about that. Everything was transactional. It's like, what do you want? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I was so fucked, that now it's like I can let that guard down. It's okay. You know what I mean? And what they mean by "we is greater than I" is, we do this thing together. I can't, I hear a lot of men, they'll come into meetings and they'll be like, it's just so hard because I had to admit that I can't do it. I can't do it alone. I can't do it by myself. And like, for me, it's like, why would you want to? Like, why would you want to try to do this thing by yourself when there's a whole fucking group of people out there to help you? Like, everybody's into this, like, these personal development shit, and like all these personal development books and all this other shit. Like, dude, the 12 steps is the greatest development process like out there, and it's just like, it's written, it's right there. It's not anything crazy. Like, I've heard so many people, "Oh, that didn't work for me," or "That's not for me." And it's like, I can't wrap my brain. I'm not saying that there's not other things and whatever. Just, for me, it's just like, it doesn't make sense, because it's like, these are just questions that they're asking yourself. You answer. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just about getting honest with yourself and with somebody else. That's all it's about. And you're just systematically going through, your wreckage, and you're righting your wrongs, and you're just seeing what's under that. Because everybody wants to come in and they're like, "Oh, I have a drinking problem. I have a drug problem." It's like, dude, I have a thinking problem. You know what I mean? Like, that's my problem. Is that, like, I want to escape. I want to get out of here. And it just so happens that, like, drugs weren't my problem. They were my solution. They were just a shitty one. You know what I mean? Like that was what I used to feel okay,
Yeah.
And it, as I abused, it started to work the opposite. Right. And, which brings us here.
I've heard more profound things in meetings than I ever have. And I've been gone to meetings on and off for a couple years. And I finally like this. There's a couple things that I want to say. I finally, I lost it because I thought of something else. I just was saying that there are more profound things that I've heard in meetings than I've ever heard in the entirety of my 33 years here. Just the things that some people say, and it's not even like, it's just comes to that. Like, it's just because they've done the work. They've done the work and they continue to do the work. And the things that like touch me so much might not even be something that they think is like that impactful or powerful, but it truly is. And then also I wanted to say, because I don't know, I don't know if you believe this. I imagine you do, but I'm not sure. Do you do it one day at a time?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, all I have is now. That was one thing that actually the essay has taught me a lot about. Same thing with AA or NA or whatever. Yeah. It's like, when you say essay, like, oh, sex addicts anonymous, you think of all this like crazy shit, like, oh, I'm a date, whatever. But it's like, it's not about the sex. It's about the fantasy. It's the fantasizing in your mind and not being present, right? And, lust can look like a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be about sex. It can be about, I can be lusting after anger. I can be fucking lusting after, it's like playing out these imaginary scenarios in my head and not being in the present moment, right? So that's helped me out a lot with that, like realizing when I'm in fantasy. And again, doesn't have to be sexual fantasy. It can be completely a fantasy about whatever, you know what I mean? I think visualization is important as far as like, if you're into like manifestation or meditation and stuff like that, I feel like that can be helpful. But what I mean is just like, like future tripping or worrying or like, catastrophizing things in your head. So it's like, for me, the ultimate challenge and goal throughout my day is just to be present. You know what I mean? Like enjoying the process, like knowing that there is no end goal. So fall in love with the process, like fall in love with the path, because this is the way. You know what I mean? As the whatever the fuck was it, Obi-Wan Kenobi or that one Boba Fett or some shit, I don't remember, but he says this is the way. Like this is the way. You know what I mean? There is no top of the mountain. That's all an illusion. You know what I mean? So it's like being okay with doing the work. Yeah. It's all part of it.
And I asked that because I know when I thought about quitting drinking and doing drugs, I thought this is going to be every day for the rest of my life. And that scared the shit out of me and made me not want to do it because that scared the shit out of me. I'm like, you're going to tell me to do this every day for the rest of my life? And then my, in AA and through people in AA, I learned it's just one day at a time. It's one, and then even sometimes for me, it's 1 second at a time. And I'm not even talking about just drinking and drugs, but like, I have other things that I struggle. Everybody does, right? For me, just to get through it, sometimes it's one moment at a time and trusting that I'm going to make it through. It's going to be okay. There's someone higher than me watching over me and all that. But that's what got me, that's what makes it okay for me, is that I think of it like that. Well, I'm not drinking for today. I'm not doing drugs for today. I hope never do them again. That's my prayers and wishes. But it gets me through to just look at it one day at a time.
Yeah. And at least for me, like that I was relieved pretty quickly of the obsession, the urge. Like, not saying I don't think about doing drugs ever. Yeah. Every time I enter a public restroom, it's just like I get flashbacks, right? But it's like I haven't had that urge, and by urge I mean, dude, like when I wanted to use it, like I was like, fuck, like to get off of heroin, I had to be strapped down to a fucking bed in a hospital for 10 days, so it's like that's the type of addict I was. Like I wanted to get high, I was gonna get high, so and then through doing the work, like yeah, I don't know. For me, I just realized there's so much more to life. You know what I mean? Like,
So
like
much
I
more.
have a different view on it today. It's like, cool, I could go have a drink or what, but like, why would I? Like, what are we doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what am I doing? Like, what am I really doing? And it's like, I came to the conclusion what really helped me out with that was because I went through all these phases, right? Like, I tried to just smoke weed or I would, whatever, like, just I got to do something or whatever. And it would always lead me back to where I was. And so I came to this conclusion that, it's not about how long I can keep it together, right? Because I could probably go out and have a couple beers right now and be fine. Great. I could probably do that for weeks, maybe even months. Who knows, But one day, there's going to be a day where I have a little too much and all of a sudden my inhibitions are down and I'm like, you know what? I want to get fucking high, dude. And because it's like, I noticed this about myself. It could be with anything. If I start doing something like an energy drink or whatever, I'll get it every single fucking day after that. Or like, if I don't meditate for a day, that next day, it's so much easier not to meditate. Like, it's momentum. You know what I mean? So it's like, I have to be careful, so that's why it's like, I don't need drugs. I don't need alcohol. Like, I have enough problems with the stuff that I do need in my life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to throw anything else on top of the pile, like, and try to manage something. Like, if I got to try to, like, use my energy to manage, I'm like, I'm just going to have 3 drinks and then I'm going to go home. Like, why the fuck am I doing that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't need to do that. I can go fucking have some orange juice or go for a run or whatever,
There's just so much more. Something else you mentioned was the routine, which you kind of mentioned again here. I do so much better when I'm on a routine. Like, when I'm consistent with the routine, I do so much better for every aspect of my life. I don't know if you experience that too, but I have to have structure. It just makes me my clock ticks better when I have structure.
Yeah.
And then the consistency that comes with that, there's so much pride that comes with finally being consistent and doing what you say you're going to do and being what you say you're going to be. Yes, it makes you so confident. And I never experienced that before either, because I was so inconsistent because I was probably hungover or high or drunk or whatever. Or I was just tired because I was doing all this stupid shit. But I love now that I have a routine and I'm consistent in it. So I think and maybe you can agree with me that that's important for people to know that. Do whatever works for you, but also follow what people have done before you, like you said, with the steps and things like that, because it's obviously working for millions of people.
Yeah, I I try to use I statements. I never liked being talked at when I was in active addiction, and that's why even in recovery we call them suggestions, right? They're suggestions, because the reality is if you want to do it, that's why it takes the gift of desperation. If you want to do it, you will do whatever it takes to do it, and you quickly realize these things aren't crazy, right? It's just about being integrous, really, is what it's about. Having integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, showing up when you say you're going to show up, writing things fucking down and doing them, following a plan, right? And I still have problems with that today. I'm not perfect at that. But I learned that here, you know what I mean? And I think routines are very important for myself, especially. It's just like the old saying goes, like, idle hands are the tools of the devil or whatever. It's like, bro, free time is not too good for me. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I enjoy resting and spending time. I don't really have these blocks of, like, quote unquote free time, since I have kids and stuff. So it's like my times with my family or whatever. There's always something. There's always something to do. I like how I really liked how you touched on, that building the self-confidence thing. Because that is what's really going on, right? Is you get these little incremental wins. And even when I sponsor guys, like, I tell them, I want you to do step work every single day, right? And our book is like these little questions, right? I did it through the NA step working guide. So what I tell them is like, dude, do what you can each day, meaning like commit to something that you can do. And that is, because as an addict, right, I'm going to do 30 questions a day. I'm going to do whatever. And then what happens is you don't do it one day, you fucking take that loss, and then it carries on the next day, and you start building shame and guilt and whatever. But dude, even if it's a fucking minute, if it's one question, just do something every single day. Every single day. And it'll build confidence, right? It'll build real self-confidence, not this fake shit. So it I remember I texted 160 people every single day for almost 2 years, every single morning without fail. Wow. I would do my little morning message, and I would send it individually. Now it wasn't like in this thing. I would press send 160 times every single morning until that built all this anxiety in me, because I had to it took me 20 minutes. So I was I had to cut out these. Yeah. So I eventually I stopped, because I realized I was doing it more to for the show aspect than I was actually getting out of it. But I would just do things and do it every single day. So I lull in and out of that. There's times where I'm extremely disciplined like that, and then there's other times where I'm trying to find my way back into it. But some things that I don't ever go without, and that's meetings. I started training jujitsu as soon as I got sober as well. So that's a huge part of my recovery. I always recommend for somebody to kind of get a physical aspect, if they can, whether that's CrossFit, whether that's, jujitsu, or some form of other accountability group that you can stay accountable to and do. Because for me, it's really good for me to have a physical counterpart to that, because I learned similar lessons in both, as far as meetings and jiu-jitsu. But I got my purple belt in jiu-jitsu this year, so it's that is incremental progress. You can't get a purple belt in fucking 2 weeks. You know what I mean? That took me 5 years. So it's building. You know what I mean? These little it's that long-term wins rather than that little instant gratification stuff. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's being able to see that now.
Yeah.
The long-term
100%.
wins and how worth it the work is.
Right.
I wanted to ask you, kind of just get your perspective on one word, and see if you connect with it: freedom.
Yeah. What's my perspective on freedom?
Do you feel like that word connects with you now that you're sober and clean? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Kind of how I said in my share about, how I thought I was free when I was homeless, and I think for a little bit I was, you know what I mean? I don't believe that there's any pieces of my puzzle that were useless. You know what I mean? I had to go through what I had to go through. Is that what I believe everybody should go through? No, everybody's different, right? Just like certain diets work for different people and whatever. That is what my personal journey had to be. It served its purpose. But yes, that just like the word God, you know what I mean? Freedom and God are constantly evolving for me. It's a constantly evolving definition of what it means to me. Today it's just freedom means internal freedom. You know what I mean? That, like I said, that knowing that everything's going to be okay. That in itself is a freedom, knowing that the world doesn't fucking sit on my shoulders. You know what I mean? I don't have to figure out everything. It's okay if I don't know something. You know what I mean? I can admit when I don't know something and ask for help. That's a freedom. You know what I mean? There's many different aspects of freedom that have came through my sobriety and doing, like I said, the work, so.
Yeah, I love that. That was a big thing for me, was I finally felt free in so many ways. So many ways. So
I mean, just at a base level of not having to run around and fucking find out where you're going to get your next, whatever. And
or the money to get it, or all the things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you should have done meth, because meth's a lot cheaper than cocaine. It's probably could have kept you going a little bit more.
Yeah. For sure. So is there, usually when I ask at the end, is there anything I should have asked you or that you wanted to touch on that we didn't?
No, 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 no. I mean, I really feel like that was the crux of it. Like I said, I really like how you ask about when, when did your healing begin? Because I feel like that's what's important, right? Like we all have our own stories. We all have our own traumas, and everybody's is just as relevant as the next person, right?
100%.
Like everybody wants to build this victim mentality of like, oh, but you don't understand, this happened to me, and then and it's like, bro, how long can I go living like that? You know what I mean? Like I can sit there and oh, I was homeless and I did whatever, and
Yeah.
obviously I've developed compassion and empathy for people, in my in sobriety as well. I'm not as cold as I used to be. My partner Jojo really helps me out with that. She's very, very good and very loving, and is constantly teaching me about that. But there's two sides to the coin, right? Because we are compassionate, but it's like, all right, now let's get involved in solution. What can we do? How can I help you? What can we do to get this better? And sometimes helping is just listening, right? Like I know that too. But I do believe that, at some point we got to start taking accountability, or I had to start taking accountability for myself and realize that, like, there's not anybody coming to save me, man. Like, that's just the fucking reality of it. You know what I mean? If I sit around waiting, I'm going to be waiting for a while, and I'm going to be miserable in the process. So, it's better for me, but most of all, it's better for others if, I start working on myself and helping other people. You know what I mean? Like that's like I said, at a very base level, I owe, and I'm here to help others. You know what I mean? And if I try to maintain that mindset, I'm going to be all right. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be okay.
Absolutely. I love that. Cool. So I feel like we could talk for hours, but I'd have to go get my daughter from school.
You're good.
Which
I
is
gotta
why
go
I'm
too.
like, cutting it a little short. But if we ever want to talk again, I would love to talk again sometime.
No problem.
But I really appreciate your time and your honesty and your transparency with everything and your journey. You telling your journey.
I appreciate the platform to do so, and I hope this this helps. This helps whoever's listening, and if there is anybody listening, you're not alone. You know what I mean? There's plenty of groups and people out there that are willing to help. You just got to be willing to receive it. So that's it.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you again. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Healing Well, the podcast. We will see you next time.